This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Do you love NFL football fun and booze? Join us at Thirst and Goal Podcast every Saturday night for weekly NFL coverage, whiskey, bourbon, scotch, and beer reviews. We mix expert football analysis with signature drinks, original segments, and lots of laughs.
Yes, that's right, football fans. Please join us at Thirst and Goal Podcast by heading over to thirstandgoal.buzzsprout.com or search Thirst and Goal on the web. If you're tired of boring podcasts, come join our football party.
Greetings, Dog Pound Nation. Welcome to the Two Green Browns podcast, now part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network, with myself, John Cahill, and my good friend and fellow Irish Browns fan, Neil Dunworth. Today's show, Combine Week. We're having a little look at who is going to be available to the Browns and a little delve into what we think, or players that we think could be worthy of a Brown selection in the draft. So we're going to do our top three sort of my guys, players to watch, or players that we want to see and how they produce at the Combine. You ready for Combine Week, Neil?
Yeah, I've been listening to Jeff and Pete, and they've been speaking about on Lockdown Browns, and they've been speaking about the change to primetime. It didn't register with me that last couple of years when I've watched the Combine, it's been great because we've been able to watch it at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, our time, which has been fantastic. So work finishes and you just sit down and you watch Combine stuff, and it's been great. Whereas now it's going to be on prime time, which means we're obviously going to have to stay up late if we're going to have to watch it. And I like watching the Combine. Obviously, you like more some positions over others, but it's good to see it. It's good to hear people talking about prospects. It's good to see how prospects are kind of reacting to certain things, and I like the fanfare of it. I just find it good TV, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's going to be a bit more difficult to watch it this time. It is over a weekend, obviously, so we could stay up and watch it if we really wanted to. But I probably will. But I would just prefer if it was, they're so inconsiderate to us over here in Ireland and the UK is to change it to prime time for the States, like. It was the one good thing we had.
Yeah, the word prime time to me just conjure up images of going to work with no sleep. That's so I think I might be hard passing the live Combine and going to the shortened highlights for the next day. So Neil, anyway, we're going to go through. We're going to pick a few guys here. We've 3 guys picked out each that we're going to have a little chat about where we think to fit in with the Browns and why we like them. Your first guy on the list, I know we haven't really spoke a whole lot about who we've picked or what direction we're going, so I don't actually know who you're going to speak about. So tell us a bit about the first guy you want to have a look at this week in the Combine, and why and where you think he fits in with the Browns in the coming season.
Yeah, so I'm first guy I really want to look at the Combine is Bradley and I. And the reasoning for this is just some news that came out today was with regards to the fact that the Browns may be looking to move on from Olivia Vernon, something we spoke about in the last podcast. It was actually eerily strange because on Roto World it said that they're looking to move on from Olivia Vernon, his cap hit or whatever. And then I mentioned Everson Griffin, and I went, geez, we spoke about that in the last podcast. And now no way are we in any way, shape or form soothsayers or play with the tea leaves or anything like that, but if it did come to pass, it would be a monumental blind squirrel files a nut kind of a situation for us if we were to have called that one. But I think with him going, there's obviously going to be a need for edge rusher. Obviously, I think if we do let him go, or if we do shed his 15 million cap hit, which I don't really see the point in. I listened to Jack Duffin and he spoke some sense on it, that he has all the leverage at the moment. We have no leverage. If we get rid of him, everybody knows we've got 15 million. So if we're getting in an edge rusher that's anyway decent, they're going to say, yeah, give me the 15 million, please. So he's got we don't have any incentive to kind of, for people that are coming in that instance. So back to the question that you asked. Bradley and I, he is out of Utah, 6'3", 257 pounds. Played predominantly in 4-3 at Utah, and he's somebody that I watched an awful lot when I was doing my offensive tackle roundups of the offensive tackles. And if you guys haven't seen it, hop over to Browns Access. You'll be able to see my 6 parts already there. Some video stuff, some podcasts on it, and also some written stuff as well. If you haven't seen it, you can catch it there. But I was looking at some of the offensive tackles. Bradley and I obviously jumped off the page to me. He was an edge rusher. And I began to see him, and I went, this guy deserves a small bit more investigation. Now, obviously, he had been spoken about at the start of proceedings, I suppose, within the draft. It's not as if he was a complete unknown. He was somebody that people were talking about, but to get eyes and visuals on it and to see it in real time, for me was something that I wanted to see. He's number 46 at the moment on Matt Miller's draft board, which means that we should probably be looking at him maybe in the second round, best case scenario. And I don't know whether we're going to draft him that high, but he is somebody that I would look at. He's got he's a real grower when you look at him on tape. He does pop, and as I say, when he was working on a lot of offensive tackles, he had some good and he had some bad, obviously. He's definitely a speed guy, but I think looking at him, he has got some questions over his bend, as how he uses it to get around the outside as well. I think he could play his hands up guy, or maybe his hands in the dirt. He's got a fantastic first step. That's the biggest thing you see from him. He is very speed based. I think some people have mentioned that maybe he only has one kind of trick. He's a one trick pony with his spin and so on. But, I don't tend to see that. I've seen a couple of times that he does this kind of strange thing whereby he kind of when the offensive tackle's punch comes, he creates this barrier with his shoulder almost. And it's, sometimes I've seen it once or twice and I've kind of thought it was a bit unorthodox, but it actually worked. And it kind of knocked the punch, if you know what I mean, and it created a good kind of a block for the punch itself. Think he's going to be very good with pull and push techniques as well to be able to get around. His run defense, obviously because of his size, 6'3", 257, he's a small bit undersized from a run defender point of view, maybe a bit problematic. And that probably shows with his college tape because his tackle production has been low in college. He hasn't tackled that much. He's more of a kind of a ball hockey, goes for the quarterback. It's quarterback or nothing kind of a thing. And he's not going to be a factor in coverage, but it's someone I'm really looking forward to seeing. I think we're going to need huge edge help, and you're going to see that in the 3 guys that I've picked here. Well, you're going to see blitzing and rush capabilities in the 3 guys that I've picked here. But I think that we can't be in a position like we were at the end of last year when we had Port Augustine, Brian Cox Jr., Chad Thomas, and they were our only options. We need proper depth, and we need to get young, and we need to get more dynamic on that edge rush piece. So yeah, Bradley and I out of Utah.
What rounds or what kind of projection for Bradley and I to go in? Neil?
Yeah, so Matt Miller has him at 46 on his big board so far, and that to me, that's you're going to be looking at it. He's 46 best player, I suppose, but yeah, you probably be looking at late second round, maybe if you could catch him early third round, it would be fantastic. But that's kind of going to be the area that he's going to be floating around in, I think.
Okay, and it's something I forgot to mention at the start. You're focused on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to look at the offensive side of the ball. And just to be clear here now, Neil has a lot more knowledge on this next player that I'm about to speak about. Now, this is it might be, I know, so maybe the other guys that we're looking at maybe not as obvious, but this is probably the most obvious one of the guys. He's someone that caught my attention very early on in looking at players this year, and that is Mr. Mekhi Becton. An absolute monster of a human being. Now, that's a pro and that's a con from what we're seeing. Mekhi Becton, Louisville, left tackle, 6'7", 370 pounds. I'm going to be very, very interested. That's what's listed on Pro Football Network or on the Draft Network at the moment, but it'll be very interesting to see what he weighs in at. He has arms for days. This guy, the highlights can be seen ragdolling people all over the pitch. Very, very, very I feel, high floor for what he can be. His potential is the sky. The sky's the limit for this guy. Now, I'd suppose I would also temper that by saying there is a potential bust factor there, but I personally think from what I've seen, he's going to be, I think, a massive, massive player for whoever gets to draft him. Becton, like, whilst I had been sort of fan buying him for a few months, I thought he was a guy that was going to be like a second, third round pick that we might be looking at. That's one of the reasons I was looking at him. I was looking at guys that were projected second, third round that we might be looking at drafting with our second and third round picks. But ever since Daniel Jeremiah's initial mock draft, had him going 4 to the Giants. Now, people stood up and listened when Daniel Jeremiah has someone going 4 to the Giants. So in the class that's there at the moment and the pick where we're picking, I think we might be lucky if Becton is still there, and I think he's a guy we should really have a serious look at. Wirfs is another guy that in that area, and Andrew Thomas, other guys that are there. I just it is not, and I suppose the reason I'm picking him and the reason I'm looking at him as a sort of a my guy kind of thing, the physical traits that he has, there's no one else in this draft like him, and there's huge potential there. Now, Neil, I know you've done a bit of work on Mekhi Becton, and you have podcasts out there recently detailing stuff about Mekhi Becton. What I'd like you to do now is talk me out of Becton. Talk me out of him. Give me the cons. I've given most of the pros there.
It's hard to really talk you out of him because, like, he's not known. Like, a lot of the things are good. He's 3-year starter, and he's moved around the line, left tackle, right tackle, and so on. I've seen him play in certain games against Montez Sweat. He actually followed him across the line, which was impressive because he was only just gone 19 at the time. He does nice things when he's on the field, and he's on the field quite a lot. He plays a lot of snaps. He's just a freak, 6'7", 370 in and around. He's the cons are going to be his size. You're going to look at him and say, is he going to be Trent Brown or is he going to be Zach Banner? Trent Brown, Zach Banner. There's a big disparity between the two. One of them is playing with the Raiders and has, I think it's the Raiders, isn't it, with Trent Brown, and is after getting a bag full of cash. The other guy was dropped from Cleveland's practice squad and comes in as an eligible receiver as a sixth lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. But and with that, Neil, I said, just like when you're having comparisons there, like what I would caution everyone to do, go back to last year's combine and look at Orlando Brown, and look at what Orlando Brown did in the combine, and look at the season Orlando Brown has actually, 2 seasons. Orlando Brown is in the league 2 seasons. Look at where Orlando Brown is now, and look at what where he was at the combine, and how I suppose his 40 time or his bench press or whatever it was that he was deemed to have failed at the combine. I'm not going to be so concerned, although I would like to see Becton turning up a few pounds lighter and a little bit more muscle on him.
And I think as well, something that should be borne into consideration as well is the amount of pass rushing snaps. The amount of passing snaps at Louisville as well. It's considerably lower than the other players that would have played, that would be vying for first round tackle capability as well. So obviously if you want a pass protector and so on, I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm playing devil's advocate. You asked me to come up with some of the cons. That might be a con that might be worth watching, might be worth looking at. People might want to dig into it and see if he can do it at a more consistent level than he has shown on tape.
Be interesting to see. Right, Neil, your number 2.
My number 2 is, which one will I go with? Okay, I'm going to break up the 2 kind of defensive line guys. Jordan Brooks. That's who I'm going to go with. Jordan Brooks is somebody that I really, really like. He's out of Texas Tech, and he is 6'1", 240. He's listed anywhere between 240, 245. He's a middle linebacker. I think he probably projects to be a middle linebacker or will linebacker at the next level. He will not miss a tackle He's a short space defender. He's 360 tackles, 224 solo tackles, 32 for loss, and 20 of those 32 for loss came last year alone. And also 108 of his total 360 tackles came last year. The man's a beast. He just tackles forever, absolutely forever. He's got great size for run stopping ability. He's a blitzer. He's very good at blitzing. He could, provided that he can see the hole, he could get through the crack in a plate. He's really good at spotting his gaps and going for them. Probably some problems in shedding blocks. When he does get blocked, he has some problems in those. Might remind you a small little bit of somebody whose contract is up for renewal soon. The one thing I would say where he probably does differentiate himself from Joe Schobert really is that he does have some coverage concerns. Obviously, Schobert is one of the best coverage linebackers in the league. And maybe what I'm thinking of by drafting someone like a Jordan Brooks is if you can free up Joe Schobert to not have to be the spy, the run stuffer, the tackling machine, and the coverage guy all in one, and you can let him maybe focus on his coverage side of things because you've got an absolute brick wall in Jordan Brooks in there, that will allow Joe Schobert to flourish. Something that I've been thinking of, because Jordan Brooks in coverage, he's fine. He'll shadow people in short spaces, but he's not going to run with a tight end 20, 30 yards and break up a play. I just haven't seen it on tape for him. I really haven't. But what he will do, and what I think is going to be important in the AFC North, whether you have a Joe Burrow, whether you have Roethlisberger, well, maybe not so much Roethlisberger because he's not really going to move around, but definitely for Lamar Jackson is this guy is going to be a quarterback spy. He's going to spy people, as I said, if he spots the gap and he's fast enough at getting through. He's fast enough to get through gaps. If he spots the gap, he could get through the crack in a plate. That's the kind of guy he is. And if you can have that spy, a guy that is nimble enough and has enough intelligence to be able to basically just hunt down Lamar Jackson if he gets on the move. We're going to need somebody like that. We're in the world that we're in the AFC North at the moment, and Lamar Jackson ain't going anywhere unless somebody blows out his knee, which I hope doesn't happen because it's not nice to see. But to have a quarterback spy like Jordan Brooks, I think it's going to be brilliant as well, especially against that type of quarterback. And also, as I say, the other pluses are if we do re-sign Joe Schobert, it allows him to maybe maneuver around the back end. Also, it gives you your coverage ability in Mac Wilson. He can come in and out, be rotational. And Jordan Brooks could rotate with Sonny Taki as well. Or we could always put on, I'm not even saying put money on, but we could play in more blitz heavy schemes. You could play Taki in there as well, considering he has edge rushing ability from BYU as well. So Jordan Brooks is somebody that I'm going to look at. I'm going to be interested to see how he does in the combine. And just for posterity as well, to let you guys know, he's ranked at number 50 on Matt Miller's draft board. That's quite high from what I've seen. I've seen him normally go in the mid to late third round. So I think maybe our second, third round pick, he could be someone we could look at taking.
Very interesting. With your team there of covering tight ends and stuff, I was just reminded of my second pick. So my logic for obviously from looking at Mekhi Becton very early in the first round is the obvious glaring need we have at tackle. I think in this outside zone blocking scheme that Kevin Stefanski has implied in the Minnesota Vikings, where we've seen Kyle Rudolph. And who was the other tight end? There was a couple of other tight ends there. There was 2 or 3 in tandem a lot of the time in Minnesota. Names just escaping me there at the moment.
Rudolph. Was it?
Yeah, Kyle Rudolph. And there was 2 or 3 tight ends there that were getting run. They had the guy from, was it Alabama? Oh, God, I can't think his name. It's just gone. I'll let you research. Well, when I know it's definitely, I think it was the guy from Alabama that they got last year. But Thaddeus Moss,
Smith.
son of Irv Smith Jr.
Yeah.
Sorry, Smith Jr., your name escaped me there. Anyhow, Thad Moss, son of NFL royalty, Jerry Moss or Cherry Moss. Got Jerry Rice and Randy
Je-
Moss.
Jerry Moss delivers coal. That's
That would have. I was just going to say Jerry Moss would have been some receiver, a hybrid of Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. But Thaddeus Moss went down the route of being a tight end at LSU. Now, I was looking up Thaddeus Moss earlier on, and on the Draft Network, he's listed as 6'3", 225 pounds. But Neil, you've just been telling me that that's bubkus, not bubkus.
yeah.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. I suppose it's better. Yeah, he's 6'1" and 7/8, I think, and he's 250. So
Wow.
do you feel
Okay,
very
well,
light, though?
Look, well, for the 2 inches you lose in height, he's gained 25 pounds. He's just become an ultra dense blocking machine. Thaddeus Moss is not the best tight end in the draft by any stretch of the imagination. You have Cole Kmet ahead of him. You have guys like Troutman. You've a good few tight ends. It's a weird tight end class. It's quite deep. For what's there. But what Tad Moss has is a very, very good blocking game. Very heavy hands, very good catching balls underneath, very good at blocking, very good at the point of attack. He really is able to beat people down and collapse stuff down in front of him. And I would not like to be lining up against him. You look at the tight ends we have in the Browns at the moment. We don't really have that. We don't really have that anywhere. Njoku, for all his positives and all the great attributes he brings, blocking is not one of those. He's a very, very polished blocker, and it allows him to kind of it allows him. I think the skill set he has is going to allow him to come in as a very, very early starter in the NFL. And we know traditionally tight ends have a very slow start in the NFL. I think Tad Moss could come straight into the Browns and be a starter from day one. Now, I mean, come in and light the league up and be a number one tight end, but I mean a very, very, very effective starter in the league. He has the pedigree. He has the very dense, thick body for it there as well, and he has the history there in LSU. Like he's been on a good team. He's been coached well, and he's that versatile guy that can go and he can run routes. He can run in under. He can catch in under. He's he's not going to run away from you. He's not going to catch the ball and run away from you. And look, we don't need that. We don't that's not something we need. But for a mid-round guy that can come in and I think be a solid day one starter contributor on this team, I think we don't have to look any further than Tad Moss.
I'm going to talk about a player here and see, do you know who I'm talking about? And see, does it sound familiar? So this player attended Harvard University, where he played at tight end, and he played from 2009 to 2012. He put up production of caught 125 passes for 1,576 yards and 22 touchdowns. Since leaving college, he has played on 2 NFL teams. He was drafted in the 4th round in 2013. He's played on 2 NFL teams. He has 4 Pro Bowls. He is known as one of the best players in his position. He is 6'1" and he's 240 pounds.
Did you give me a position?
I didn't give you a position. He's not a tight end. That's the trick question.
Fullback.
That is Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah.
He's 6'1" and he's 240. I'm not saying that we should the Tad Moss couldn't be drafted. I just think that he becomes a do everything H-back, tight end, Orson Charlesian type player. Jesus, if he could be anything like Juszczyk, that would be bloody amazing. I think that the revelation today of his height is going to push him in towards the fullback, H-back side of thing.
I don't really see a problem with that.
Oh no, I don't either. I don't. It's not a con. Absolutely no, it's not a con. A con for me. I think it drops him down the draft board.
If you can catch the backfield. You know,
I don't think he's like I'm looking here at Matt Miller's draft board and he is coming in at 106, which makes him, borderline. What is that? That's start of the fourth round. I probably think he's probably mid late fourth round. Probably his name might get him drafted as a tight end. As a fullback, though, do you draft a guy that high as a fullback? I don't know. As I say, Juszczyk was drafted in. Well, he was drafted pick 130. In the fourth round. So maybe.
Kyle Juszczyk would be an absolute crazy good scheme fit for what Kevin Stefanski wants to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Straight out of San Fran, out of the Shanahan Kubiak style. But look, who's to say Tad Moss can't be that guy? He's able to move like Juszczyk. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. We know that. He's a good blocker. Just try and convince him.
How many fourth, fifth round draft picks have we hit on in the last 4 or 5 years that have stuck on the team?
Oh, 100%. But then it's very difficult for. This is a completely different podcast, but it's very difficult for fourth, fifth round picks to stick when you're changing scheme, you're changing coordinators once every 18 months. And that's being kind. Like we've had Joe Schobert, Ryan Higgins. That's all I can really remember so far. But but look, I think it's different for tight ends and for fullbacks. They're going to stick a bit more because they are drafted at later rounds in the main. But no, I don't disagree with Tad Moss. I don't. I just think that it was just really interesting because when he was 6'3", you're thinking, yeah, here we go. Randy Moss's son. He's going to be able to catch it over the middle and we might be seeing some fella blaze in for touchdowns. He might be an intermediate kind of weapon over the middle. Now that he's 6'1", you're probably looking at him going, right, Randy Moss's son, I wish he was 220 or I wish he was 215 or 210. And he was 40 pounds lighter and we could push him out and maybe have him as a slot, as a big slot or something like that. Whereas now he's 6'1", he's 250 and you're going, he's definitely H-back. Yeah, so I think today has just really kind of put a position on him, really.
Yeah.
Which is good, which is no problem. I'd still draft him.
I'm not out. I'm not out on him. I'm not out on him as a tight end just yet. But we'll see, and it'd be interesting to see verticals and a lot of the traits based stuff at the combine. Be interesting to see how he performs. Sonny, bring us on to your last player there on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, my last guy is somebody who was at the Senior Bowl. He's a big boy, and the reason that once again I'm going back to kind of the defensive line side of things. I kind of picked all my guys that I picked were in Matt Miller's 40 to 60 bracket within there. It was like second, third round, so I was looking at because I'm steadfast on getting a tackle at 10. I think regardless of whether we sign with him free agency or whatever, we just need to get a tackle at 10 anyway. It's just it's too top heavy to be able to pass on it. So that's why I focused on these sides. Marlon Davidson out of Auburn, 6'3", 297. Derek Brown, Nick Cole's running mate, should I say. Basically, he played as a D-end in a 3-4, and I think that kind of hampered him. He's much more likely to be a 3-tech at the next level. He has the strongest hands. They're like he hits people very hard. They're like bulldozers. And they just come like cannons. They're very good. They're noticeably good. The first thing actually you notice about him is the strength of his hands. And actually probably his placement where he locates them as well within the tackle is good, because even if a tackle gets their hands up and gets some good leverage on him, he's still like it's the speed of the punch that it's like the phrase beat to the punch, except obviously in a different context. That's kind of what he does. He has a fantastic first step as well. He trusts his first step. For a guy who's 6'3", 297 pounds, he trusts his first step, and that tells you an awful lot about him. He's explosive, he's athletic, and he kind of enjoyed playing off as a defensive end in that 3-4. As I say, he's probably more likely to be a 3-tech within the 4-3. I actually think that one of the difficulties with him are, his hips don't really turn. So when he gets engaged, like he's going to maul you, but he's not going to use bend or anything like that to get around you. He's just not. He's too big. He's a huge individual. And sometimes the mental side of his game, you know, while he can hit very hard and while he is immensely strong with upper body, it's just like it's crazy. Sometimes he can get washed out with a mental error here and there, but I suppose let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I suppose when you're looking at any of these edge rushers in this class, after you look at Chase Young and Derek Brown, I suppose any of these defensive lines, should I say, they've all got small flaws here and there that they would need to work on, but are fixable, I think. Matt Miller has him going, or has him on his big board at, where's it gone to again? He has him at, I'm so sorry, I've lost it. Where did I see he had him? Oh, there he is. He has him at 32. Has him at 32. Now he's Zach Bond at 30. He's Udor Grossmatos at 31, and he's Marlon Davidson at 32. And he has him listed as an edge here. I probably think my comp for Marlon Davidson is he is probably. I'd go so far as to say he could be Matt Judon. But for me, I think he's probably more likely to be in our system, like a Sheldon Richardson light. He can play in the middle. He can pop out to the side. Sheldon Richardson's measurables are very similar. He's 6'3", 295. And Marlon Davidson is 6'3", 297. And they have a lot of similarities in the way that they play. Probably Sheldon is probably better bended him and stuff like that. But, if you've got almost a cookie cutter template or type of guy to be able to bring in and roll out. And in his first year, Marlon Davidson would be a good projection to be a good role player, and then maybe could give you options, to move people in and out to the edge rusher positions if needs be. But he's somebody that I would take a look at in the second, third round as well. It's obviously going to be an either or between himself and Bradley and I, and I would be happy with either of the two of them depending on scheme. I really don't know what the rush game is going to look like under Woods yet. But yeah, Marlon Davidson, he's got pedigree. He's played with a good stable of running mates there, as I said, with Derek Brown and Nick Coe. And, from a second or third round pick point of view, I think that he would be, should he fall that far, I think that he would be very, very serviceable in this front four.
Saw him being interviewed on, I think NFL Network the other day. Comes across as a really good, humble guy. Comes across very well being interviewed. So, definitely a guy I wouldn't mind seeing in a Browns uniform. Be interesting to see where he goes. Be interesting to see, where he falls into the scheme of things.
I would hate to see him go to. He's just a kind of a guy that because obviously Derek Brown gets an awful lot of the kudos, and he's just phenomenal. Derek Brown as nose tackle and so on, but I'd hate to see him go to the AFC North, Marlon Davidson, because he just has that guy written all over him. As I mentioned, like Matt Judon type. Yeah, so that's basically it on Marlon Davidson. I just don't want him to go to the AFC North, really. But anyway, John, who's your third guy?
Neil, it's going to take me a minute to get to exactly who my third guy is, because there's a little bit of backstory. One of the reasons I am a big draft fan, obviously from being a Browns fan, is I love watching skilled players in the combine and all through the draft process. It used to be running backs were my thing to watch, and now it has moved on to wide receivers. So we're starting to narrow down who my third and final pick is. This draft is stacked from top to bottom with wide receiver talent, and really I think if the Browns trade back or even at 10, they decide to go best player available and we end up with a Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, it is not something I am going to complain about. But if you look at the room at the minute, look at the wide receiver room we currently have at the minute, outside Jarvis and Odell, and I think Higgins is, not long for the Browns, I'd imagine, either, depending on how things go. That room is going to be fairly stripped out of we have the top row of talent and we have a few guys at the back, but we don't really have anything in the middle. So looking at the guys, looking at what we need in that room, you've Odell on the outside and Jarvis on the inside. We need guys that can do other jobs. We need someone that can go get the ball, someone that can go high point the ball, get up and can be really competitive with contested catches, and a red zone threat as well. So there's 3 guys I was really looking in this area that are going to be available, I think, in the sort of the mid-round area. One guy I was looking at was Colin Johnson, 6'6", 220 pounds, out of Texas. Going to be really interesting to see how he tests this week. On the big side, he's a big go-getter, kind of guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones from Michigan, another guy worthy of a mention in this area. Terrible on the stats in the last year or so, but he had Shea Patterson throwing him the ball. So, can't hold that against him. In my opinion, he's probably going to be one of the biggest risers in the draft after the combine. When we see his measurables in the combine, he is going to fly up draft boards, in my opinion. But the guy that I'm looking at here today, and for a handful of reasons, really, Michael Pittman Jr. from USC, 6'4", 223 pounds, a guy that projects as a sort of he projects as I think as an extra big slot in the NFL, and a guy that I think that could be a core special teamer in the early part of his career anyway. Really strong hands. Not afraid to get up and get after the ball, not afraid to lay the wood down, put his shoulder down. He's a nightmare matchup for a lot of cornerbacks. And if we're trotting him out where you have, he's the matchup for the third cornerback on a team when Jarvis and Odell are being looked after or double teamed or whatever. He's a guy that can bully. He can bully players on the field. So, I think he has a bit of everything in his game. He's a slow burner speed wise. He's not a speed guy. He kind of needs a bit of a runway to get up ahead of steam, but he has enough to get by, and toughness, just the physical profile and the blocking ability that he brings onto that team, I think, are something that this Browns team would be really interested in. Now, there's other guys there that, with this, I'm sort of projecting this sort of third round kind of pick here. They're probably going to look at guys with returnability, and I think there's probably guys I think that might be in the mix, like a Jalen Rieger or one of these guys that are return specialists as well. Because I've heard Prefer on recently about not having a return man, so that's a route they could go. And I don't think Pittman's going to add a whole lot to that game. It's not his game. It's not something he's bringing to the table. But with regards to being a big, strong, clever wide receiver, a guy I think that can come in and start in the league, and this is, you notice the team to stuff with guys I'm picking, Neil, guys that I think project to be a starter in the league, that we still have him here in 3 years' time. Not guys that are getting cut or that are getting, traded off for 7-round picks in a year's time or 2 years' time. And a guy that I think could really fit well into the system. He really caught my eye this year in some of the games. I think it was against Utah. I saw him playing this year, and he had a couple of touchdowns, and he got up. He really got up and got after the ball, and said good heritage in the NFL. His dad played in the league, and I think got to a Super Bowl as well. So a bit of heritage there too.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about him. Obviously, he was supposed to be in the Senior Bowl, but he had to back out because he strained some ligament or some muscle in his foot, and he couldn't go full tilt. But he was getting obviously great reviews there at the Senior Bowl. He's got good production, but apparently he was absolutely knocking the interviews out of the park. He had some good impressive reps in the 1-to-1 drills, and Isang Bassi, he had his way with him, the Wake Forest cornerback, the small Wake Forest cornerback. He had his way with him in some of the drills then as well. So yeah, look, as I say, you mentioned he's not going to be a speed guy. He's probably going to be somewhere between high 4.5, mid 4.5. It's going to be what he's going to project best at. But look, with his height and everything like that, it's fantastic. If he got into the 4.4 range with his 6'3" and he's a big bodied receiver as well, he would be a nice deal for somebody, because I think with the draft the way it is, and with the way that the draft is so the way that this draft is so wide receiver centric. There's a lot of them there that you're going to see guys like him fall to the third round as well. And yeah, why not pick him up to be, a running mate with Jarvis and Odell?
Indeed. And Neil, I think what we'll do before we finish up here, we'll make a little plan thing for next week to come back. We'll come back next week. We'll have a post combine chat. We'll check all our combine darlings, and we'll see how our guys matched up to, a couple of guys we spoke about. As I said, I'm projecting guys like, there's always one. We'll have our Henry Ruggs with a possible record in the 40. We'll have guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones maybe changing people's minds. Hopefully, the likes of a Mekhi Becton coming in looking like DK Metcalf's older brother, when he weighs in. So it'd be interesting to see. But we'll leave it there for this week, and we'll get back to our to the combine next week with a post combine show, and we will see who the winners and the losers are. That'll do for today's show. Thank you very much for listening. I would be eternally grateful if you could please pass on the pod to your friends by retweeting, or if you could leave a review. That would really help us out. Follow us on Twitter, myself at John Cahill and Neil at 2 Green Browns. And until next time, go Brownies.